Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Lauren Newman, the Chief Revenue Officer at Button, and I'm excited to be here with our partners from Forrester Consulting. Today, we're sharing findings from a commissioned total economic impact study examining the impact of better mobile commerce experiences. As shopping continues to shift toward mobile and in-app, and consumer journeys become increasingly fragmented, understanding the business impact of optimizing those experiences has never been more important. We're thrilled for you to hear directly from the Forrester team that conducted the study, as well as hear insights they've gathered on how the mobile shopping experience and its demographics have evolved. At Button, we're committed to being the enablement platform that powers the affiliate and creator economy. We are one of the largest independent commerce technology companies with over $100 billion in commerce revenue running through our links. And the one thing we have been hyper obsessed with is creating the best, most frictionless consumer journey that results in best-in-class user experience, higher conversion, incremental revenue, and more lifetime customers. And while we know that it's becoming increasingly complex to navigate the path between discovery and purchase, and that even small amounts of friction in the mobile journey can have an outsized impact on business outcomes, it has always been hard to validate and calculate its effect. How do you measure something you can't see? But what has always been clear is when a consumer clicks with intent, where they land and how quickly they get there matters. And if those two things fail, so does the sale. So we set out to really measure this and commission this study because we wanted an independent framework for understanding and quantifying that impact. Forrester's total economic impact methodology is widely recognized for its unbiased approach and rigor, and I'm proud that they helped us calculate what a better mobile commerce experience is actually worth, and not just in adjectives, but in actual dollars, expected return on investment, and cost efficiency gains. But before I hand it over to Forrester, I wanted to quickly ground everyone in where Button sits within the commerce ecosystem. We are squarely in the center of these high growth markets: creator marketing, affiliate commerce, and retail media. And today, consumer intent flows across all of these touch points. As those journeys become more interconnected, the experience between click and conversion becomes increasingly difficult. Button's dynamic decisioning product optimizes those journeys in real time using our AI-powered technology and proprietary transaction-level data set to deliver the right experience to the right consumer, the experience they were intending to access, while helping creators, retailers, and brands maximize the value of the demand they've already created. With economic pressure, tight margins, and short attention spans, it's imperative that every high-intent click leads to an in-session sale. That's the context for the research you're about to see and the impact this study set out to measure. With that, I'll turn it over to our partners at Forrester Consulting, Sucharita Kodali, VP Principal Retail Analyst, and Julia Fadayeva, Principal Consultant, who will begin with a look at the trends shaping today's commerce landscape before walking through the study methodology and findings. We'll leave time at the end for questions and discussion. But after the next 45 minutes, I hope you walk away with quantifiable reasons why you need to revisit your mobile tech stack, and of course, why Button should be powering it. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. I am Sucharita Kadali for everybody in the audience. I am a retail analyst and have been covering retail at Forrester for almost 20 years and was in the retail industry before that. Now, before we get to the section that really gets into the ROI of some of these problems, I'm going to level set and provide a bit of a 30,000-foot view of what's happening in the commerce landscape so that it can help us better get a sense of the magnitude of the issues that we're having. So first, to start with, the retail industry overall is growing, and it's very large, trillions of dollars. By 2028, we're expecting it to approach $30 trillion. And a significant and growing part of it is, of course, e-commerce. E-commerce in 2025 was a $5 trillion market around the world, and it continues to grow not only more rapidly than the offline world, which of course is why what we're doing on mobile devices and what we're doing with digital sales is so critical. But it's growing across a variety of different categories. Now, all that said, there are always questions that I'll get from retailers because they individually may not be seeing growth. And even though the industry overall and e-commerce is growing, not every retailer is growing. And part of the reason that even some of the largest brands that you may know and have in your past frequented may not be seeing the growth that the rest of the industry is experiencing is in large part because there are so many new upstarts. The barriers to entry in e-commerce are lower than ever. So you have small influencers. You may have independent chains. You'll have sellers from overseas. And we can thank a lot of the e-commerce platforms that now exist that have lowered those barriers to entry for everyone. What that ultimately means is that competition for those consumer dollars is incredibly fierce. It makes things like retention and acquisition harder than ever. So all of those things that you're spending money on to drive shoppers to your site or to even develop awareness ends up being harder than ever to actually convert to sales. And we're going to talk about even some of the challenges, even if you do manage to get somebody's attention. When we're looking at that $5 trillion e-commerce number, it is going to vary across a number of different categories. And what that means is that it's so large that people are purchasing virtually everything with high levels of frequency. They're purchasing commodities and consumables. 40% of consumers in the US, for instance, have purchased things like vitamins and supplements online in the last three months. You have categories like apparel, which are one of the biggest, which is penetrated at a 50% level for most consumers. Things like beauty products and even higher consideration, lower frequency purchases like jewelry also have double-digit penetration from a research standpoint. And when we're looking at how all of those shopping journeys happen, as Lauren had mentioned, they happen not in a linear fashion. They happen across all of those touch points, whether it is affiliates or whether it is through digital ads, social media, traditional online search. You have your owned channels like email and text. And of course, influencers and content creators being a significant portion and even more important for younger consumers. You'll see here that when we're looking at tactics and channels like social media or content creators, they index significantly higher for those younger consumers and those consumers that, of course, marketers are eager to get hold of. The other major theme is in addition to a greater percent going overall to e-commerce, a significant portion now is also headed to mobile commerce. And that's been even faster after the pandemic. We saw years and years of fits and starts with mobile commerce. Mobile commerce, of course, it supposedly was the year of commerce ever since 2007. When the iPhone was first released. But it really started to change to the small screen in the wake of the pandemic. And we now finally have over half of sales in e-commerce happening consistently on those small screens. The reason that is particularly critical is that conversion on those smaller screens is lower than the e-commerce conversion that we are used to on desktops and larger, kind of full screen experiences. What that means from a marketing standpoint is that you need to drive twice as much traffic in order to get the same number of sales. And that means, of course, significantly greater investment in marketing. At the same time, it's also imperative to invest in the mobile experience. What I can say from my years in working with different retailers is that much of the investment in mobile optimization happened earlier when there was less mobile traffic to optimize. The great irony is that now, as more consumers are spending time on mobile devices, there actually has been proportionally less investment in mobile. And then on top of that, you layer on other distractions that CFOs and operations teams at e-commerce companies have, whether it is an obsessive focus with investing in LLMs and AI or challenges with the macroeconomy and interest rates. You have even a higher bar to meet with respect to those mobile investments. Now, even with mobile, there is a significant focus and interest in, from a consumer standpoint, in apps. Forrester, of course, does surveys with tens of thousands of consumers around the world every year. These are 4 regions of the world that we have conducted surveys on how consumers have evolved their attitudes toward mobile apps. We have, of course, the US, regions in Europe. Here I'm showcasing the UK and France, and in other parts of the world as well. I pulled Australian data for the purposes of this particular presentation. And the 2 data points, the first that I want to share is the percent of consumers that are actually expecting companies to have a mobile app in their engagement with their customers. As you can see, it is a double-digit percent around the world, and it indexes even higher for younger consumers, Gen Z and millennials here. And when we look at, in a shopping context, how many people are actually researching on those mobile apps, this too is a significant percent of consumers, which also, similar to the previous slide, indexes very, very high for the Gen Z and the millennial consumers as well. So as you're looking at who are the customers of tomorrow, who are those customers that I want to build that lifetime value with, I want to build that longer term relationship with, these are their expectations. So what we know is that shoppers are researching on the mobile app. We're going to come back to this expression of the lead to conversion problem. And the other issue is that we're going to talk, and Julia will talk about the challenges in quantifying exactly some of that disconnect and the value that shoppers get, and that ultimately that merchants get when they are able to discover what those problems are from traffic that sometimes can get misguided or misled, the size of it, and ultimately the impact of it. But what we also know, and just even stepping back, is that when that experience is broken, what we see is often just abandonment altogether. And when there is abandonment, and consumers just decide to leave the research process entirely, or they leave a website entirely, and either they don't purchase or they go to a competitor, that is the heart and the crux of a problem, that hidden problem where you don't know what you don't know. Because one of the unique quirks of retail is that for the most part, there are very, very few retailers that are looking carefully at things like their market share or looking at what they are losing to their competitive set. And that, however, is typically what does happen when you have worked hard to get a consumer through some of these marketing tactics, whether it's online ads or influencers or the affiliate channel, and then ultimately you're not leading them to the page they may be looking for, or you just drop them on a homepage and make it very, very difficult for them to ultimately find whatever product it is that they're looking for. And that is that expression, that lead to conversion problem. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Julia, who's going to talk about just how large of a problem it is and the opportunities that exist for merchants when they're able to actually resolve it.
All right. Um, Thank you, Sucharita. Hopefully everybody can see my screen now. My name is Julia Fadеева, and I'm a principal consultant on the TI team at Forrester. I'm very excited to walk everyone through this the results of the total economic impact study. So, at this point, you're probably wondering, what do I keep saying? TEI, total economic impact. And that's the methodology that Forrester uses to justify and explain technology investments. So I'll walk you through the components here. First, we look at the benefits. These are usually the advantages that an organization would gain from implementing a service or a solution. And then we look at the costs as a second part of that equation. And that could be direct costs, like the fees that you would pay for the tech solution, or those could be indirect costs, and that could be internal labor or ongoing management of a solution. And then we take into account what we call flexibility. And that's the possibilities that you unlock for the future, looking forward, by having that solution today. And finally, we want to make this analysis really conservative, and we want to make it realistic. So we built in different factors of risk, or account for the uncertainty that basically is inherent in any technology investment. So together, all of this comes into this total economic impact, or TEI, as we call it. And this is the framework we'll operate within today. So how do these studies work? How do we put them together? We start by learning as much as possible about this space, right? So we'll work with Sucharita, or the analysts, other Forrester analysts, will get up to speed on the industry reports and work as much as we can to have an intelligent conversation with the actual users of the product. So ultimately, for this study, and that's the heart of this report, we talked to 5 Button customers who've been using Button for a while, and they were able to share their experiences, their findings, the outcomes they've seen up to this point with us. So after we conduct those in-depth interviews with them, we use this information to create a hypothetical aggregated view of a customer. So we'll call it a composite organization, and I'll speak a little bit more about that moving forward. But essentially, you should know that the composite is broadly representative of the interviewees. And then based on that, we create the financial model, write the case study, and then we'll have the same customers make sure that the case study feels accurate to them. They'll review it. Sucharita would review or reviewed this study, and now we are ready to share the outcomes of that study. So what is the outcome of this effort? The big takeaway that probably jumped at you from the slide is the composite organization, which again is an aggregated representative of the customers that were interviewed, sees a return on investment of 432% from using Button over the course of 3 years. Again, over the 3 years, their total benefits are worth 4.2 million. But if we subtract the costs, we are looking at the value that we call net present value, and that would be equal to $3.4 million. Again, there are a lot of numbers on the slide, and throughout the study, there's also a lot of numbers. But what I really love about TEIs are the customer sentiments that are coming through, and all of the great stories that your peers are sharing with us. And I think I've put a lot of the quotes in this presentation just so that you could see what your peers are talking about. Essentially, this one is about driving up app-to-app integrations to maximize affiliate revenue. And their interviewee is also calling out that Button has the best-in-class account management team. And I think we cannot just ignore that fact. So just to ground you on who we spoke with, specifically for this analysis, we interviewed these 5 customers. You can see there is a range of customer or company sizes, right? We have from 1,500 employees to 10,000 plus, but there is also some variation in the types of organizations, right? Retail, e-commerce, specifically apparel, we have tech, etc. So there is some variation in the companies that we've interviewed and are represented in the study. However, despite all of the size and in vertical differences, we heard a lot of the commonalities in the types of challenges that they experienced. And that really overlaps with what Sucharita was mentioning, right? First of all of them said that traffic from affiliates and creators that they were working on was often landing in the wrong place. Instead of their users clicking on the link and smoothly being directed to the checkout journey on the app, they were routed to generic mobile web pages, dead pages, sometimes to in-app browsers that are never a good experience. So obviously, the users didn't have a good time. And the problem with that is that the conversions were taking a serious hit from that user experience problem. The second major pain point was attribution. Teams said that they were seeing a lot of inconsistent and missing attribution for their affiliate or creator-driven interactions, and that impacted their internal reporting. That also strained their relationship with partners. They had to work around this, of course, and so their teams spent a lot of time on the phone with those partners if their sales were not correctly attributed, and their teams in IT spent a lot of time troubleshooting those issues. Again, not an optimal situation. And finally, we heard that a lot of them had a major KPI of app installs, but they were struggling to measure them effectively. They were struggling to see where this traffic to an app is coming from. They couldn't always tell which creators are leading this. So it was really difficult to prioritize the right partners and to scale what was working. And they were really, really struggling with this. So as I said before, we can't really talk about the individual customers' results for protecting their anonymity for the study. And that's why we combine all the findings into a composite organization. Again, this is an aggregated view of everything we heard. So I'll use that term composite organization moving forward. But just to orient you here, for this study, it is a company that is based in the US. It is obviously a business to consumer company with 1 billion annual revenue, and we are setting our average order value at $120. So based on the data that we collected, we are modeling 3 major benefits in the ROI calculation that they contribute to the ROI. This is all analysis presented over the course of 3 years. And the major benefits are the increased conversion rates, increased app installs, and the efficiencies that the internal teams are seeing on managing affiliate or creator channels. Again, I really want to spend more time talking about each one of them individually. So this one is the biggest benefit. And I think it is solving for that biggest problem that Sucharita was talking about, right? Improving those conversion rates. So what these companies that we interviewed saw before Button was that it wasn't really rare. It was very frequent that a user would tap on an affiliate link, let's say on Instagram, and then they would land on a generic logged out mobile web page. Today, what they see with Button is that it takes them directly to the brand's app. They're usually logged in. It drops them to the right product page. And so the interviews talk about how now they're able to fix these broken customer journeys. This leads to more affiliate or creator-driven sales across the board. They all said Button repairs these broken experiences, and those dead links, clunky in-app browsers are the story of the past. They are being the users are being brought to a place where they're most likely to convert. The interviewees were not just saying it. A lot of them are very savvy, and they told us extensively about the A/B tests that they've done versus with Button journeys versus non-Button influence journeys. And they provided us with data that we used for the model for the conversion rates and also for the revenue per click. And they've seen an increase in both. In this quote above, you can see the manager at this company is talking about 100 to 150% improvement in revenue per click when they are using Button. Based on the data that we saw, we modeled a conservative 65% increase in conversion rates. And that results for this composite company in 3.4 million in incremental profits over the course of 3 years. However, we see a lot of the quotes where, that story is consistent and some of the findings are even higher. We heard this story from every interviewee. The one company that you see on the slide talked about significantly boosting their affiliate revenue through Button. The interview went on to call out that Button's platform does best-in-class job at driving traffic to specific product pages to convert. A separate interviewee actually talked about an even greater increase in conversion rate. They cited a 2x to 3x improvement in certain cases. So again, this was the story that came really loud and clear for every interviewee that we spoke to, and that was very, very impressive. Another benefit that was key and that we heard a lot about was the ability to drive mobile app installs. So for a lot of those organizations, the number of app installs per year was a major KPI. And the reason for that is because marketers and retail players know that the more customers you have on app, they're more loyal. It's likely that they're spending more compared to non-app customers as well. So the interviewees really talked about Button detecting automatically whether someone has their brand's app installed. And if they don't, Button would route them to the App Store. They shared that once they have the app, they're more likely to purchase again. They have higher customer lifetime value going forward. So that was really key. They shared the data with us again. Based on their results, we modeled a 70% increase in 70% increase for app installs in the composite organization, but also the average app customer doubled the annual spend as compared to a non-customer. So that is also taken into account in the model. Over the time of 3 years, that accounts to be over 600K in profit, but you'll see specific data points from different customers in the study as well. This one interview talked about 250K of app installs in a single year, and they were able to also do the A/B tests to make sure that they can prove again and again that Button drives more traffic to their apps. Another customer talked about a significant increase as well. Again, we modeled a 75% increase, but some organizations are seeing an even higher results. They talked about doubling the number of creator app installs from using Button. So again, a very significant finding here. And these were the two revenue and profit related benefits, but there was also an internal time saving, productivity saving for the marketing teams. Interviews talked about, noting that internal marketing teams saw significant time savings, such as reducing their day-to-day effort that is required to manage those affiliate creator partner relationships. Again, because they're able to avoid a lot of those deep linking issues and fixing those attribution gaps, they don't have to deal with that anymore. The marketing teams are avoiding a lot of partner escalations that came from commissions that were not being assigned correctly, paid correctly, or where the sales were misattributed. So with that, they're seeing a reduction in the time spent there and increased productivity for their marketing team. So we modeled a 15% productivity lift, which over the course of 3 years for Composites marketing team amounts to just over 100K worth of employee time savings. But again, different customers saw slightly higher results, right? This manager talked about this being a huge issue before, but Button being able to resolve most of these issues creates significant time savings. They estimated it between 15 and 20% specifically from their team no longer having to chase down those issues that they've seen before. So again, these were the 3 top benefits that the customers were able to put a number to. However, there are others that are not necessarily included in the ROI calculation, but may be true for your company or were no less important for these other clients, but just didn't have the numbers attached to them. Specifically, those were improved insights into affiliate or creator performance, reduction in adjustments and cancellations, high touch account support from Button, and then finally, better relationship with partners. And I want to pause on every one of them with a customer sentiment story. So this organization in retail talked about how Button gave their team a much cleaner view of what was happening across their affiliate and creator channels. And so they knew from these analysis which campaigns are doing well, which are struggling. And then the interviewee also said that Button didn't just provide the data, but they actually, what was very important and valuable to them, they were actually getting help from Button on how to act on the data. They've specifically said that Button brought insights to the table that led them to asking even more questions about their own portfolio and other parts of their portfolio that was very valuable to them. When we return to fixing those, attribution errors, there was a financial result to that. For some companies, we didn't put it in their ROI calculation because not every organization provided us with the data on that. But this specific interviewee in the retail space estimated that it is saving them millions of dollars per year, not having to deal with the broken journeys and attribution issues. Another important thing that we heard from across the board was the praise for Button's account team. Everybody was really impressed with the level of support that they got. And also, they called Button a true partner to their marketing team. They said that they're really proactive and they helped identify the issues that happened, right? Continuously help team improve performance. Sometimes they said, Button is actually picking up on big issues that their team wouldn't have seen otherwise. So again, a pretty big compliment to the support team. And finally here, we heard that, again, I think it comes kind of as a natural consequence of not dealing with escalations, not dealing with the issues. There was a stronger relationship with partners, potentially improving retention for some of those cases. The story that we heard across the board is that they were able to improve the performance creator campaigns, and they were properly attributing those sales to those partners. The partners were going to prioritize working with their brand, and they saw higher quality traffic coming from them to their app. So again, the sentiment was that Button definitely helped retain partners, and that made a huge difference when you are in a relationship business as they are. So we talked about the benefits, but of course, in every revenue ROI, return on investment calculation, there is a second part to the equation. There is the costs section. And as I mentioned before, there are two types of costs typically, right? One is the fees that an organization would pay to a vendor like Button. So that amounts to $700K over the course of 3 years. But on top of that, there is also an internal effort, labor, that's required to implement Button and also lead it through the integration process and manage the work together as a partnership on the ongoing basis. So the internal labor amounts to 71K over 3 years. And that's essentially a wrap up of the numbers, right? Which leads us back to, is the ROI of 432% over the 3 years. Again, the net present value, which is the benefits minus the cost, is 3.4 million. And you can see kind of on the right side here how it stacks up over time over those 3 years. Again, I'll just share these numbers are really impressive. But I do think that the stories from different types of companies that were interviewed are no less important and could provide just as much insight into the value of Button as the numbers do. So this, I think it's been enough of me talking for today. So I'll bring it back to Lauren for some Q&A.
Thank you, Julia and Sucharita. We're super excited to see the numbers. And if I recall correctly, I remember you saying it's one of the highest ROI measurements you guys have seen at Forrester when doing a TEI report. So we are really, really proud of that. Thank you so much. Happy to take any questions from the audience and continue the discussion. Anyone have any questions? Don't be shy. All right. Do you only work with retailers who have apps? No, we don't. We work with all types of companies. We obviously work with e-commerce retailers like you saw in the study, but we also work with travel brands like Expedia. We work with transportation brands like Uber. We work with financial services companies like MoneyGram. We work with the world's largest brands across every category. The gating factors that you do need to have an app. You need to be obsessed with driving your anonymous mobile shoppers into your registered loyal users in app. And if you are hyper focused on doing that, then we can help you not only drive installs, but drive that higher conversion rate. How can I see the case study to determine what my costs and benefits and ROI might be if my company invested in Button?
I can take that. So there, the study is built in a way that is hopefully really easy to do, to use, to pick it up and use it for your own calculation, right? We, on purpose, are very transparent about the formulas that we use, the inputs that we use. So essentially, anyone could pick up a TEI, download the TEI, look at the analysis, and put your own numbers essentially into the formulas to calculate what your return on investment would be. I would say some inputs may be a little bit easier to adjust than others. For example, if you're looking at the productivity improvements for your marketing team, you know how big your marketing team is, right? So you can easily plug in the number of marketers, you can plug in the number of, percent of their time that's spent on managing those affiliate relationships, and you can see the improvement, right? For some of the other calculations, like what percent of your revenue comes from this type of links or partner relationships, for example, if you wanted to adjust that, that may require a little bit more prep. But again, all of this is really easy and manageable. You can basically download the study and make it your own really, really easily.
Great, Julia. And related to that, I think we have a question on how do the results vary across the 5 verticals? Is the 65% conversion lift consistent across retail, apparel, delivery, etc.?
Yeah, so as I said, this study is built for one composite organization, which is essentially an aggregate view of all of the companies that we've interviewed. So it's basically we put all of the findings in a blender, and what came out is the composite. However, if you saw some of the quotes had slightly different results, right? And a lot of them would be mentioned in the study. So if you paid closer attention to, the supporting elements in the study, you'll see the variation across those customers that we've interviewed.
Great. A question that came in, how does your deep linking tech differ from companies like AppsFlyer or Branch? I can take that. MMPs are great providers of cross-channel measurement. They are intended to understand your audience and where your audience is coming from to be able to probabilistically determine budget allocation across all channels. Button was hyper built and hyper focused on the affiliate channel. And in affiliate, you need to have deterministic tracking, not probabilistic tracking, because you can't reward somebody who looks like Lauren Newman, who made the purchase. You have to reward me. And so we work really closely with the MMPs to make sure that our technology rides on top of their measurement so that retailers get both that cross-channel allocation as well as deterministic tracking. And we make sure all of our data gets imported into those MMPs as well. So we are a great complement to the MMPs, but we do something very differently. The next question is, beyond the quantified ROI, what was the most surprising strategic benefit customers reported that wasn't fully captured in the Forrester results?
I'm not sure. I know what was the most surprising benefit, right? We saw several of those benefits that were not, I wouldn't say fully captured, but that they were not put the numbers to them, right? They were not included in their ROI calculation. But I do think it's, it really depends on what your business is struggling with, right? So if if the relationship with your affiliates and creators and partners is key, I think fixing all of those other underlying issues really led to improving those relationships, right? But also gaining a trusted partner in your struggles. As Sucharita was outlining those types of struggles, it's not an easy world to operate. So if you get a partner who's knowledgeable and who's going to support you through a lot of these issues, I think that's a really valuable finding as well. I don't know if to the Button team if any of these were surprising.
It wasn't surprising to us because we know that we provide an incredible value, but I think it was surprising to hear from Forrester that that ROI number was the highest you've seen within your TEI reports. So that's just a number we're very proud of. Any other questions? There's no more in the queue, but if anyone has any last minute question, we're happy to take it. If not, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today and for listening to the impact that Button can make on your mobile tech stack. Please visit tei.usebutton.com and reach out to me or our team, and we'd be happy to talk to you about how these results can apply to your business. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.